Hi, and welcome to my presentation, Stop Policing Writers from Small Steps to Big Impact in Anti-Racist Community Building. First, let me introduce myself. I am Tracy Gardner. I am an instructor at Virginia Tech. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I primarily teach professional and technical writing. I am straight, cisgender, and white. I'm disabled. I'm a lifetime Girl Scout. I am a Hokie alum and a Steelers fan. And if you have poodles, I would love to pet them. I want to begin with a comment about acknowledgements. I acknowledge that acknowledgements are worthless without accompanying action. I include the standard acknowledgements for the land where I live and work on the right. Rather than simply acknowledge the Tuvalu and Monacan people and the enslaved Black people by reading that text, I make a call to action. As you navigate this conference and the world around you, I ask that you watch for stereotypes and absences of Native and Black peoples and call them out. Insist upon correction. In honor of these historically excluded people, I pledge to do the same. So this presentation takes up the conflict between language and strategies that police and control students and alternative practices that support students. While the challenges teachers face are massive, we can use some simple strategies to build more welcoming communities for all students. In short, a few small steps can make a big impact in the classroom, moving students and teachers to more welcoming, anti-racist classroom communities. I'll begin with an overview of policing in the classroom, and then I'll examine the deliberate, though sometimes unconscious, classroom practices that attempt to control students and their work. I'll suggest how to revise classroom practices to eliminate the language and strategies that focus on what students cannot do or cannot say, and instead focus on what students can do and how we can support them. So some approaches to school policing. The ACLU Bullies in Blue white paper and infographic provide a glimpse of the problems with school policing. The white paper outlines these 5 roles that law enforcement officers typically play in the classroom. They can be a law enforcer, informal counselor, teacher. They can provide emergency response, and frequently they are a school disciplinarian. The difficulty here is the always present power structure that is created by the simple presence of a police officer, even when softened by renaming the position to school resource officer. The ACLU explains, over the past 50 years, our schools have become sites of increased criminalization of young people, a disturbing fact that is even truer for poor Black and Latino communities. Today, police officers assigned to patrol schools can legally use physical force on students, arrest and handcuff them, and bring the full weight of the criminal justice system to bear on kids who are simply misbehaving. The primary role of police in schools is to enforce criminal laws, and virtually every violation of a school rule can be considered a criminal act if viewed through this police-first lens. No matter what approach, there is always a power structure to this relationship. The law enforcement officer has the power, and students must conform or risk physical and mental injury and arrest. This power structure rolls over to the teacher in the classroom. This list of class rules appeared in the professor's subreddit earlier this year. The poster, whose name I blurred out, asked members of the subreddit what they think about this list of expectations for the class. And I'll read that excerpt now. Your dress code may be business casual. However, no political, sexual, racist, or cute messaging tops are acceptable. Do not dress as though you just returned from a Gold's gym workout. No baseball caps will be worn. You will not eat/snack in class or chew gum. And you will not text or email. You will not slouch. Cover your mouth if you feel a yawn coming. You will remain Red Bull alert throughout the session. You are not a passive observer. Participate. You will check in on time, or better yet, a few minutes early. You will not leave a Zoom session without permission. Email me after a Zoom class session if you have tech problems. Be sure to project your voice and not to mumble. Now, this post was roundly shouted down as absurd, overly strict, and impossible to enforce on the subreddit, and yet a review of syllabus policies and class rules will likely find examples of most of these rules. perhaps not all together in one paragraph, but you can find them. For the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to look at late policies from various schools. The analysis I'm going to demonstrate can be used with other policies as well, such as an attendance policy or group work procedures. This policy on this slide is from the North Arkansas College syllabus. So let me read the policy. All essay assignments will be turned in electronically through portal. I will only accept essays in electronic form. I also will penalize late work. You will be penalized 1 letter grade for every day that the paper is late. I accept no excuses for late papers. If the paper is late, it will be penalized. No essay will be accepted when it is more than 5 days late. So the first thing you may notice about this policy is the emphasis on I, on the teacher. It is a teacher-centered text with 3 uses of the pronoun I marked here in bold blue, as opposed to the only one use of the pronoun you, who is the student, which is marked in bold maroon. This policy also relies on passive voice. As it states the policy marked in bold green here, the blue still represents the pronoun I. There are 4 uses of passive voice, each with no indication of the person who will take the action. Assignments will be turned in. You will be penalized. Late papers will be penalized, and no essay will be accepted. In each of these uses, the passive voice hides the teacher who enforces the policy. This late policy also uses the word will to emphasize the policy as enforcement with punitive ramifications. The word will is highlighted here in yellow. Other coding continues from the previous slides. Assignments will be turned in. I will only accept certain things. I also will penalize. You will be penalized. Late papers will be penalized. No essay will be accepted. There's no room for negotiation or discussion here. The teacher enforces the policies, policing student behavior. Students comply or they're penalized. This is a late policy from Thomas Nelson Community College. Let me first read the policy. Projects and discussion are due on specific dates. This is not a correspondence course to be completed when convenient. Late work will not be accepted unless there are extenuating circumstances, and it will be up to the instructor to determine whether or not to accept the assignment. Should you run into an instance where your work will be late, again, only in dire emergencies, you should contact the instructor as soon as possible to determine if the work will be accepted. I'm sharing this policy from Thomas Nelson because of the tone that the first parenthetical statement adds. It's highlighted here in green. This is not a correspondence course to be completed when convenient. That one phrase communicates so much about the course. First, the writer indicates that the first statement isn't enough. The opening line, projects and discussions are due on specific dates, is straightforward. It's not particularly concrete or specific. It feels rather obvious to me. Of course, they're due on specific dates. When else would they be due? That parenthetical statement takes on the tone of authority, however, and giving the writer power over the reader. There's no welcoming tone here. The writer is talking down to the reader, even scolding the reader for a thought that we don't know if the reader even had. Finally, I have an example from Mount San Antonio College. First, I'll read the policy. In general, I do not accept late work. 0 reading responses will be accepted as late. I will allow a 1-week grace period for 1 draft of 1 essay. After 1 essay, the grade will be dropped by 1 letter each additional day. This does not include the final portfolio. It will not under any circumstances be accepted late. Any late essay will not, however, receive comments. This policy, like the others, approaches the policy from the teacher's perspective. It includes passive voice and authoritarian tone. Further, it is a confusing series of statements that could have been broken out and organized. It starts with a clear statement, I do not accept late work. Then it repeats that idea, emphasizing the point 0 reading responses will be accepted as late, and these pieces are highlighted in blue. I understand that the writer may be focusing on one of several kinds of work in the course, But the first statement already covered this idea. Why does it need to be said twice? Well, maybe because I actually do accept late work. I will allow a 1-week grace period for one draft of one essay. So in reality, I actually do accept some late work. But next, the policy moves into the consequences. After 1 week, the grade will be dropped by 1 letter grade each additional day. Okay, clear enough. But then we return again to emphasizing not accepting late work. This does not include the final portfolio. It will not under any circumstances be accepted late. That under any circumstances statement is impossible to implement. There are circumstances that would force someone to provide extensions. But again, that's the way the policy is written. So the policy, in this case, to summarize, says, I don't accept late work. I don't accept late reading responses. But wait, I do accept 1 late draft of 1 essay for 1 week. But I'll drop your grade after 1 week. So I guess I do accept late work after that week. But I won't accept the late portfolio. Then the policy ends with a zinger. Oh, by the way, I won't comment on your work either. That consequence feels like a buried detail, yet it communicates rather significant implications. So the policing language of the teacher/enforcer is typically teacher-centered rather than student-centered. It uses lots of I language, and the I is the teacher. It uses passive language that hides the people involved. It uses firm obligatory verbs like will and must. It uses an authoritarian tone that often talks down to the reader. It uses repetition of the ideas for emphasis. And it sometimes has confusing organization, which may hide details. Finally, there is one thing that unifies these 3 examples, and that is whether or not they discuss why these policies even exist. There's actually no explanation of the reason for these policies. None take the step of explaining why these policies are in place. Why does that matter? People are more likely to accept a policy if they understand why that policy exists and what effect it is expected to create. To take a somewhat controversial example, mask mandates came with explanations of how they were intended to help protect everyone by lessening the spread of COVID-19. Whether you accept mask mandates or not, think about how you would have felt if the government or your school mandated masks and gave you no reason whatsoever. They just announced that you have to do something. You'd likely bristle and want to ask some questions. This expectation for compliance without explanation caused up Jesse Stommel's test for syllabi and test for other policies as well. And that is the because I said so test. Jesse suggests you read a sentence from your syllabus policies and add to the end of that sentence the words, because I say so. And then think about how does that make you feel about your policy? So here's our policy, because I say so. I am the enforcer, and you must do as I say simply because I've said it. This is the kind of language strategy you use with a 3-year-old when you get tired of trying to explain why we don't stick forks in electric outlets. It says to the reader, you're not mature enough to understand. I'm in charge, so do these things because I said to. The point of this analysis is to recognize that teachers, perhaps unintentionally, bring the language of policing and law enforcement to the classrooms. To classrooms where many of us otherwise talk about community and support, yet our policing language conflicts with welcoming and supporting students. So how can we make a more welcoming syllabi? The Social Justice Syllabus Design Tool offers 6 points teachers can follow to convert their policies into welcoming language. First, use we and us rather than I. Second, focus the message on equity and not on power structures. Allow for options with the word may or can rather than all those musts and wills. Build a welcoming student-centered tone. Avoid that teacher-centered tone. Provide reasons that explain the policies. Explain why you want them to do what they are being asked to do. And when you can, negotiate those policies with students so that students have a hand in where those policies came from. So what might this kind of a syllabus look like? This is an excerpt from my own syllabus statement on late submissions. I've used a screenshot to show the layout of the statement. First, notice the highlighted box in the upper corner of the page, marked with a blue arrow. I accept late work, no questions asked. The statement is up top and emphasized. So students are likely going to say, what? This is not the normal thing I see in a syllabus. And ideally, they will then read on. The parallel paragraph, now highlighted with the blue arrow, explains the concept a bit further. I accept late work. You do not need to ask in advance or explain why your work is late. Just take more time when you need it, as many times as you need it. Turn your work in when you can before the grace period ends. After this general statement, the policy explains the grace period. You can read the full policy by visiting my syllabus linked above. To conclude, shifting from the policing language many course documents use to more welcoming language will allow teachers to set a tone in the classroom that indicates students matter and are supported. As writers, we know how important audience awareness is when we write. If we want students to feel welcome and supported in the classroom community, we need to focus on the welcoming strategies outlined in the Social Justice Syllabus Design Tool. Doing so will allow us to make a big impact in the classroom. Thank you.